For the HHS secretary, and you are talking about things that lead to vaccine hesitancy in this country, and it is something that causes problems for people when there is not anything.
Let me ask you something.
Brothers, estamos a punto de ver un mega agarrón. O sea, así pero del chongo se agarraron estos dos. Ustedes saben que CNN, no les tengo que decir, pero les encanta estar inventando propaganda, estar empujando las ideas de los demócratas a como dé lugar, inventando o cambiando las noticias para hacer ver mal a Trump. O sea, todos lo sabemos, hasta los de mismo CNN lo saben. Y aquí se le ocurrió ir a RFK Jr., se le ocurrió ir a CNN, brothers, justamente a aclarar lo de las vacunas, a hablar de COVID, a decir que es hora de que dejen de mentir y de seguir empujando propaganda que les dicen los demócratas que sigan, por lo menos con lo que respecta a las vacunas y al virus ese que nos suspendió 3 años de nuestras vidas. Y todo eso, brothers, este agarrón es épico, hay que verlo.
Do you see your job as ending vaccine hesitancy, or do you see your job as telling the truth to the American people?
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and it is
like a parrot. You're repeating it like a parrot. I've actually read the science.
Que repite las cosas como guacamaya, güey. Que deje de ser guacamaya.
You don't want to come back here and debate the science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
No, because I'm not debating.
All you know how to do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job, to talk to people.
Your job is to tell the truth to the American public.
Yes, and my job is to get as much information as I can.
And what we were doing, skepticism,
what we were doing in COVID, and still, with regard to these vaccines, is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And sir, what you are doing.
Es que lo que le molesta a RFK Jr., brothers, es que esta vieja se la pasa diciendo que hay que confiar en los expertos, que hay que confiar en los expertos. Y todos sabemos, porque ya lo comprobamos, ya estuvo en el Congreso, el experto, que era Dr. Fauci, nos mintió a todos. Con todo lo que tiene que ver de COVID. Absolutamente todo. Vacunas, distanciamiento, cerrar el país. Todo eso nos mintió. Eso no decía la ciencia. Y RFK está frustradísimo que esta vieja sigue diciendo, es que sigamos confiando en los expertos. En ese tiempo a los expertos los callaban, a los únicos expertos que dejaban de hablar eran los que iban de acuerdo con la ideología que Fauci quería meter, igual que los demócratas durante la época de Biden. Aquí está hasta el cacahuate RFK Jr. y está dándole un encontronazo y tratando de hacer de ver a esta señora que deje de estar diciendo propaganda falsa en televisión.
Is causing information to be out there that is not accurate.
Who was lying to you? You know, President Trump, as you recall, wanted to end the lockdowns. I think the thing that did the most damage to our country was the lockdowns. The lockdowns that shut down 3.5 million businesses in our country with no due process, no just compensation. All of our churches closed our schools, and our children are still paying the price for that. And yet we had the worst outcome of any country in the world.
How so?
We have the highest death rate from COVID of any nation on earth.
Well, let me just say, because I've heard you say that before on the death rate from COVID, it's not accurate because
lo único que quiere hacer ella aquí es llevarle la contraria. Y este señor que se sabe los datos al derecho y al revés, porque él era de los pocos que estaban en ese tiempo cuando estaba Fauci mintiendo, diciendo la verdad y lo tildaron de a loco, él nada más se la queda viendo como diciendo, güey, ¿cómo es mentirosa esta vieja? ¿Cómo inventa cosas? O sea, que ya se dejen de mentiras.
Health experts say that there is a combination of factors that went into that, higher rates of chronic illnesses, which I know you would agree with, gaps to our healthcare system, and misinformation about vaccines.
But you just said what I said was inaccurate. What I said was accurate. We had the highest death rate from COVID of any place.
There are other countries that had higher, but
you can argue
go ahead
about why we had that, but nobody can tell you. I mean, we have, as you say, we have the highest chronic disease burden in the world. But Anthony Fauci was mismanaging the COVID pandemic, and he was doing it under the Biden administration. President Trump wanted to end the lockdowns. And in fact, in Anthony Fauci's diaries, he talks about how President Trump is calling him every day, trying to get him to reopen the country. People have been trying to put guardrails around it for generations, and it hasn't worked. And clearly, COVID-19 pandemic and many other global pandemics that we have come from gain-of-function research. The RSV epidemic that we have, that is the biggest killer of kids in this country today, came from these kind of experiments. The Lyme disease almost certainly came from this kind of research. So, and the scientists who you say are experts are making the argument that this is necessary for pandemic response, cannot point to one instance in history where research that came out of this kind of experimentation has actually provided us something beneficial.
So how do you prepare then? How do you prepare for the next pandemic? I mean, that's literally part of your job now, because experts think it's going to happen within the next 10 years again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did virtually everything wrong the last time.
So what about now?
The principal thing that we need to do is we need to listen to what's happening to doctors on the ground. There are 15 million frontline physicians around the world. They're mainly now connected through the internet. We can tell on the front lines what's working and what's not. If we had listened to those doctors during the COVID pandemic, we would have saved potentially millions of lives. There were therapeutics out there that were working. There were doctors that were having no deaths from COVID and treating, in some cases, thousands of patients. And we weren't listening to them. Instead, we were doing the opposite. We were shutting them down. And then, Dana, the other thing that I would say is that we need to protect our constitutional rights. That is the primary obligation
of our country. What does that mean?
Well, during COVID, we completely dismantled our constitutional rights.
Ahí tiene toda la razón. Dice, tenemos que proteger nuestros valores constitucionales. Y la vieja esta le dice, pues, ¿de qué hablas, güey? ¿Qué no te acuerdas que no nos dejaban hablar? No dejaba que preguntaras nada, no te dejaba cuestionar nada, te cancelaban. Si tú decías un comentario que no tenía nada que ver con las cosas que estaban pasando en COVID, te cerraban cuentas. A mí me cerraron 2 cuentas de Instagram. Perdí más de 500,000 seguidores en mis cuentas de Instagram porque me las cerraron. Tengo otra, pero la estoy empezando. O sea, es frustrante que por preguntas que hacías, comentarios que hacíamos, que no eran literalmente nada que fuera irresponsable, y lo digo porque tenía yo conciencia de que tenía que hacer comentarios por lo menos informados o preguntas, cancelaban a todo el mundo, te quitaban el primer amendment, y es lo que está diciendo él. Tenemos, para la siguiente pandemia, como que le preguntó esta vieja, ¿qué vamos a hacer? Dice, pues tenemos que escuchar a los médicos de verdad alrededor del mundo, que son los de primera línea, médicos de verdad, sin callarlos, como lo hicieron durante la pandemia, conservar nuestros valores constitucionales, como es el primer amendment, y está explicando, tiene toda la razón.
And censoring people in violation
of the
First Amendment.
But you're saying what not to do. I'm asking what
¿Cómo lo calla, güey?
To do. But I want to talk about.
That's something to do. That is the number one priority. We protect the Constitution. The Constitution was written.
Forgive me, but you're talking about rights, and I'm asking about a potential public health crisis.
Está explicando exactamente lo que se tiene que hacer, y esta vieja no le entra en la cabeza hueca que tiene, que lo que está diciendo es lo que se tiene que hacer. Escuchar a los doctores, vieja con cabeza hueca, y 2, no callarlos. Dejar que hablen públicamente, sin cortar información de la gente. Y esta vieja, no, estás diciendo lo que no tenemos que... Güey, pues es lo que se tiene que hacer. O sea, esa es la parte número 1, que es lo que hicieron, lo que no hicieron los del Biden. Tenían a un viejito, un enano, un pinche un duende diciéndonos a todos que cerramos los negocios, que cerraran las iglesias, que 6 pies de distanciamiento, usa mascarillas que no servían para nada y él no usaba nada, él no se distanciaba. Sus políticos amigos como Newsom, Pelosi, ellos no se distanciaban, seguían comiendo en lugares públicos. O sea, nada que ver.
That is coming, but I do want to,
And one of the mistakes we made in the last time was suppressing those rights so people weren't being heard. The doctors who were saying you're doing it wrong were being marginalized and vilified.
Yeah,
and
because again, I really want to move on, but
yeah, of
you were
course
saying
wanna
you
move
were
on because
yes,
you
I
were
do.
part of the problem.
No, I wasn't part of the
Yeah,
problem.
there was absolute press malpractice. You weren't allowing your
Mr.
job.
Que la prensa estaba haciendo una malpráctica increíble de desinformación durante COVID. Totalmente cierto.
Terry,
Your job is a fierce skepticism toward authority. And
Yes,
you weren't
I am.
doing that. You were
I am.
beating up
My
on
job is
people who
also
were dissenting.
No. Okay. Are you want to sit here and attack me, or do you want to have
You're
conversations
sitting
about
here and
public health?
attacking me.
I'm not attacking you. I'm asking questions about how to
And let
prevent
me
the next
answer the
pandemic.
question, and I'll tell you.
That's what I'm trying to do.
First of all, this is an international outbreak. So, and we're doing better at handling it than any country in the world. Mexico has 15 times the amount of measles per capita that we have. Canada has 4 times the amount of measles.
Aquí la señora esta le preguntó a RFK que qué onda con el brote de paperas o measles, sí es paperas. Aquí en Estados Unidos, pues Estados Unidos no tiene un brote muy bajo, güey. O sea, México tiene 15 veces más que nosotros, Canadá tiene 3 veces más que nosotros. Ah, no, measles es sarampión. Entonces, o sea, dice, güey, ¿de qué hablas? ¿De que hay un brote?
England has 2 times the amount of measles. Did I cause those measles outbreaks?
You're the most famous.
Did I cause 137,000 cases?
You're the most
No
famous
lo deja hablar, güey. Me cae que se pasa.
vaccine skeptic on the planet.
Let me tell you, because actually Anthony Fauci in his diaries answers the question about why we're having a measles outbreak right now. The reason we're having a measles outbreak because of the COVID lockdowns, because people didn't, like children, during that period did not get vaccinated. And in his diaries, he says this is going to cause massive outbreaks of measles and more children, he says this, are going to die. Let me finish, because you could accuse me of something. Now, let me...
No, I didn't. I asked you a question.
Yeah, let me give you the answer. He says in his diaries, more children are going to die from measles because of these lockdowns than COVID. So if you want to know, and that age group that should have gotten the MMR when they were 18 months and didn't get it, they're the ones being infected. The people in this country, and we have stopped the outbreaks at record speed in South Carolina, in Texas, in Utah, in Virginia. We've done better than any country in the world. I dispatch immediately the epidemic intelligence services to those states. I get on the phone with the governor, and we stop them in their tracks. Nobody else has been able to do that.
You have a bully pulpit.
Let me tell you just one last thing.
Go ahead.
The communities that are suffering from measles are almost all religious communities that just don't vaccinate. The Mennonites have not vaccinated since 1796, since Edward Jenner invented the smallpox vaccine. It's hard to blame that on me, as much as you want to blame
No,
it
I don't
on
want to
me.
blame you. I'm asking you because you have a very powerful voice on these issues for people who are skeptical. In fact, let me finish.
And
Let me finish.
And I've never questioned the efficacy of the MMR vaccine.
Brother, esa es la verdad. O sea, aquí se ve la naturaleza de ese tipo de canales vendidos, totalmente adoctrinados, que empujan ideas de izquierda, todo lo que sea de izquierda te lo empujan. O sea, hay que analizar, hay que realmente, o sea, si estos tipos, los de CNN, fueran honestos, sabrían que lo que está diciendo RFK es totalmente cierto. El gobierno canceló gente, cayó bocas de doctores. O sea, olvídense de mí, güey. Soy un músico loco. Estos güeyes, los doctores, los científicos, a todos los callaron, los cancelaron, les quitaron licencias de médicos. Todos, si no hablaban como lo decía Fauci, que al final de cuentas reconoció que estaba mintiendo. O sea, no manches. Pero bueno, este es uno de los agarrones más épicos que he visto en mi vida. Díganme qué piensan de esto. Suscríbanse, por brothers, compartan. Los amo.